here we go again. It's this video is about what I would call what I've heard on other videos. They call the human experiment, and they say that maybe humans were an experiment. Now, I don't know, but it's a possibility, a probability, a likelihood, and I suppose if you look at it realistically, it probably would be a fact one way or another, because I suppose if I think about it, all life and everything is almost an experiment, isn't it? It's like it's something that starts and you don't really know where it's going to go. So it is like an experiment, I suppose. But that was what I was going to start. I'm going to go all over the place as usual. And once again, I'm going to probably sound ridiculous. And it's not going to be coherent. And it's probably not going to make a lot of sense. Because it's just the thoughts as they come, rather than a proper book or narrative like a really intelligent person would be doing. But I'm just a little human, and I only pick up what I pick up, and I now realise a lot of things that I didn't, so I'm just putting it out there, hoping that someone might get a little tidbit out of it, because you're not going to get a lot out of it, but you might get a little tidbit that you think might make a bit of sense or might be useful somehow. I don't know. It's like just a little bite. But at any rate, essentially I'm wasting time here, so I've got to focus. Originally I was just going to say, what is wrong with my videos? Because I've only just started doing them. I'm no good with the mobile or the technology, and I don't even believe in it really. When I say believe in it, I think it's not beneficial, as I've said before, to human beings. I think it's a disadvantage to them in most ways, not because of the actual technology itself, but it's how it's used and what it's used for and who's behind it, who controls it, what purpose is it for, and is it healthy for the body, is it healthy for the mind, is it speeds things up, sure, and it takes you in a certain direction, but I think that is the thing, it will take you in a certain direction very fast, whereas if human beings naturally evolved, as they say, and I don't know anything about it, I really don't, but I do believe that I don't think that human beings have evolved naturally at all, and I think that all things, life, even non-life, should evolve naturally, in its own, how should I say, I don't know what, I'm not scientific or anything, I'm just another person like everyone else. And look, I think that each species, should I say, and there again, each species should evolve, I think, or develop in its own way, according to its kind of, I don't know what the word is, just according to its natural course, or what it is doing, not what is being put onto it, not what it's added by technology, not where it's going down a path that is not natural for it. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess. Like, even all animals, they should evolve as they are. In other words, a bird should be a bird, a dog should be a dog, a cat should be a cat, a lion should be a lion, an elephant should be an elephant. I don't think that elephants are meant to go down the path of a lion or be interbred with a lion. There shouldn't be any of this mixing of stuff, and I think this is what has happened even with humans. They are not pure anymore, and because of that they're contaminated, and because of that they're not taking the path that they would normally take. They wouldn't even know what the right path is. We will go what path we're led rather than what path we would naturally know to take, what is good for us, because we're contaminated, because we like now I'm talking into a mobile phone. That mobile phone has taken my direction to make this video, which I shouldn't have to be making, which I don't want to make, because it's not natural. I shouldn't be making a video about human beings or about myself, because it's not natural. I shouldn't have to do it. I shouldn't feel that I have to do it. Every human being on the planet, most of them should even know more than me, and instead we're unaware of our surroundings, because I think human beings, that's their ability, is to know what's around them, what's going on, and to know that. Even I have been in the dark most of my life, as I said before in other videos, so I understand that. And even now, I feel it's too late for me, but I do feel that yes, that it is even a little bit too late. But not too late. I still think that it's not too late. I can see that it's too late in some ways, but in another way, if it was too late, it would all be over, and it's not. So maybe there is still time for humans to just become aware and to realise, to think for themselves, to not be guided and pulled down by the things that have been deciding things for them. They're not been thinking for themselves. Human beings are not masters of their own destiny. They're not masters of their own evolution. They're not masters of their own development. They're not in control at all. I really don't think it's funny, but I got to smile because I haven't smiled for a long time. Now, this is the problem, and this is what's wrong with my videos. There's a lot wrong with my videos. I was only thinking that yesterday. I made bad videos, and what mainly is wrong with them, I think, in comparison with other videos that I've seen, is that the other videos are getting to the point. They're not airy-fairy. I'm too airy-fairy. I'm not hitting the nail on the head. I'm not saying directly exactly what I think about things. And I'm not also explaining why I am thinking that way, or why I think, because I certainly don't know it all. In fact, I only know a smidgen of what there is to know. There are lots of people out there that know a lot more, and there are other people or other beings, other human beings that have lost a lot of their humanity that know even more still. I'm just picking up pieces that are thrown at me because of my circumstances. So I'm no brilliant mind or anyone that knows anything more. The only reason I know a bit more than, say, a neighbour or someone in the street is because my circumstances are different, so I've had a few things shoved in my face, and I can't say 100% sure why some things happen to some people and not to others. Maybe maybe I did something wrong. Maybe feeding the pigeons in the park didn't appeal to some people. Maybe it was breaking some rule. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes I do some what other people might not do, but they think that people might think are silly things. I don't think they're silly, because I like the pigeons and I like to give them some stuff. I value them. I value, the living things. And in fact, in some ways it's sad, but in some ways I have more respect for the lesser beings, the lesser animals and things, not for the simple reason that I expect a lot more of myself and of other human beings, and I have let myself down. I have let humanity down, and humanity and humans are letting themselves down. It's not their fault. It wasn't my fault either, in a way, I don't think. Not 100%. I mean, I had choices, just like humans have choices, but I've always made the wrong choices. Humans always make the wrong choices. It's because we get directed. We always have two choices. We have two roads to go down. We come to the crossroads and there's two directions, and we always pick the wrong one because we're always pushed in that wrong direction. And so then, even though we half at various times something might click in our head and say, oh, perhaps we should look at that path, perhaps this, but this always seems the one that we're pushed into. It always seems safer somehow, or we get full of fear. I think that's what it's been for me. It's always been about fear. I've been too fearful to take the correct course because maybe it's easier or safer. What appears to be easier and safer to take that course. I'll say now, if you do take that course in the short term, you'll be very sorry about taking that easy, safe course. In the short term, you'll be very sorry about that safe course that you take, that you pushed into. You'll be very sorry about that course, I can tell you from my own experience in the long run. It will serve you in the short term, you think, because you're full of fear, but in the long term, it will be your demise, shall we say. And I don't mean to sound dramatic, but actually I do believe that, and it's been the case for me personally. And I think I represent a lot of human beings in my own pathetical way. And I say pathetical because it is pathetical, because even I could have done a lot better in this life and could have took a lot better choices and a lot better courses, and maybe my life would be quite a bit better now if I had taken those. And at least I say this, at least if I had taken the right courses, I would have known that I'd at least done the best that I could have done instead of the worst, because if you take the wrong course, the wrong path every time, you can be sure that you're not at the end of your life going to say that, you're going to sort of say, well, I can understand now why it's, it's the end almost, and I think that's the case. But anyway, as I've said before, what's wrong with my videos is that I realise they are too airy-fairy for people. I'm not hitting the nail on the head. Because if you don't actually explain to everyone what you think is really going on, as so many other videos do, and a lot of people would probably say some of them are pretty wacky anyway, but at least they're saying, well, this is the why and this is what's really going on, whereas but I don't like to do that, because I think that it's too much for me, and if I think it's too much, if I think it's too much out of what was my normal realistic life, just a very mundane real world life where what you see is what you think is all there is, even though I'm sure we all realise that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. I mean, I don't think even even the most realistic person that plods around just doing their regular everyday things actually assumes that really is what's really the world. I think most people probably do realise that there are like two worlds in this reality, two real worlds in this reality, even should I say, in the sense that there is what we see and what we're given, and then there would be, it's a bit like there'd be two classes, like there's rich and poor sort of thing. Well, it's a bit like that because, like the rich live in a different world to the homeless, don't they? And I think that's what behind the scenes is like what's behind, what, like what goes on behind closed doors, as they say, like even in our real world. And, I mean that like in everything, in a way, without, because I hate the fact that sometimes I might, I'm such a non-political person. That's not my world. I lived in the world of just where I did my own thing. I'm not interested in politics and religions and all this sort of stuff. I don't like to get into those things. To me, they're things that I've always left alone. But they are part of the world, and if the world comes crashing down on you, you have to say, well, these are the things that do govern our real world. So what goes on behind the closed doors in all these areas is what creates our reality, I suppose. So I suppose it is important, even though I hate actually talking about it. I don't like talking about specific people or specific in any area. But like I say, we do live in a world that is controlled by all of this. So it's not just important, it is our reality, even if we don't know it, even if we're walking around thinking that we're free and that we're just doing our own thing. These things are happening around us all the time, and they're there whether we see them or not. And if we don't see it all, then there's probably a lot more going on. That's what I would say. It's like we don't see the Wi-Fi, but it doesn't mean it's not there. Of course it's there. We're using it all the time. I'm using it now, maybe in some later videos I'll go on about what I really think about the whole setup, because I think it is a setup. I think the world is a setup. It's like a playhouse or a stage. Well, they say the world is a stage and whatever, but and it's all set up for us. We're the players, but it's all set up for us. We get to play. So we do have a choice. But like I say, if it's all set up for us, it's very hard for us to actually realise how important those choices are, and that most of the choices are being made for us. But we still have that choice most of the time to say no sometimes, and yet we don't. We let a lot happen. Most of my life I've just let everything happen because I've figured that, oh well, I'm not really doing anything right or wrong if I don't do anything, if I let it happen. But letting it happen is the same as saying yes. Like if something happens around you and is going on around you and you ignore it, that is exactly the same as saying, yes, I want that. I want that. Even though you might not really want it, and you might say, oh, it doesn't matter, or I just want to ignore it because, it'll go away, or it's not that important, it won't really change things. But every little thing that happens does change things. Every time, it's a bit like saying, oh, it doesn't matter that a store closes down. But then another store closes down, or another store closes down, It does matter because in the end you have no stores or you have something else. So it changes things, You might not, some of the changes you might not mind even, but it does change things. Over a period of time it changes things a lot. But you don't notice that period of time because everything is done very small. Everything is always gradual. It's like It's like we change ourselves. We changed as human beings gradually. And we wouldn't know what we were like originally at all. And we wouldn't even know if our thinking has changed, because it's like our perception of things now would be totally different to what it was 100, 200 years ago, 1,000. It would be totally different. Now we think it's better because we have all our technology. We think we're advancing. I guess that's the point, is that, we think we're advancing. We think we're progressing. We think we're evolving into better beings, more intelligent. We've got the technology. Maybe I'm wrong, and I probably am. But, I do not think we're evolving. I think we're devolving. I think we're going backwards every day. I think we have gone backwards. I think we've always been going backwards, because I think we're always pushed into... We shouldn't be. We should be better. But because we're pushed into areas where we think we're evolving, and it's always artificial, it's always showing us... It's like I say, even with technology, it doesn't have to be something that makes us devolve, but I think it will. But it shouldn't be, because we should have control of it. See, if you've got control of at least the technology, then it's not so bad, because you're controlling it. But if it's controlling you, then, you're gone, aren't you? You know what I mean? And even if you said, I don't mind being controlled by technology, that's okay too. If I'm the one controlling the technology, say, I may be hopeless, but at least I wouldn't be using it to lead you down a path where you are devolving, or not evolving, or going backwards, or losing your mind power, or losing your abilities. But if the power behind it does not want you to really evolve, and just wants you to be serving whatever purpose they might have, I don't know, whatever, like for instance, if I did have control of the technology, and I wanted you to work for me, because I'm like, hey, I'm a bit lazy, and hey, I can't do this, so I want all the people with the mobile phones and the technology to work for me. I want them to be, for my benefit. And I suppose I want little slaves in a way, but I want servants anyway, and I might even pay you. I probably will, but I won't pay you much, because I want to have the benefits, and, so I'm not really interested in you evolving. I'm just interested in you serving, and that's the thing, So I would say that human beings are not really technological beings. So I would say that if technology is given to them, it's not to them to evolve to better. And I personally think that even if some people were misguided enough to think that, to where they think, oh well, we add technology to ourselves so we improve ourselves, I still believe myself, or think myself, that is not ever really how human beings were meant to evolve, that was not in their benefit. Like I've said before, or what I think now, like I say, this human experiment that I've heard about, because that's not my term. In other words, if we were put here by something or something, I don't know, even if we were made by some master intelligence or something, obviously whatever made us, or why there again, some people do not believe we were made. They believe we just somehow eventuated out of thin air, like some sort of Big Bang type thing that they talk about, that sounds even more airy-fairy sometimes, I think, than my videos. But, well, it all is, isn't it, really? I have to say that. It's all airy-fairy in some ways. We don't know anything. I think everything has been even our ability to actually come up with our own little ideas, each little human being to actually think about it, is taken from us because we get all these other things pushed into us. We get all this Big Bang stuff. We get all these God things, all these things. Oh, who knows? We don't actually stop and think with a clear mind ourselves to say what. But either way, forgetting all of that, like if we were, whichever way you look at it, we are some sort of experiment because we were here by some means, and we were meant to develop somehow. Now, I don't know. I suppose there's two ways of looking at it. This is what I'm thinking now. I don't know. Like I don't know. If we were plonked here, shall I say, by some superior force, being, or whatever, originally, we may have already been endowed with everything we need. Even if you, I don't know, even if you look at, like I say, I'm not religious and I'm not trying to go along religious lines, but I'm just using every little story that I've heard. Like even if you take it that we were, whether we were plonked here by, some sort of superior being, whether some people might use the term God, or some people might say some superior artificial intelligent type thing, some people, it depends on what you want to think that we are or what our actual physical thing is here. It doesn't matter, we are biological, but whatever that means I'm not even sure, but it just means that we're a bit more natural. This world seems to be that way. I have heard that the earth and a few things are biological, where other things maybe are not quite so much, but even we would still be part of something that is, some sort of, I don't know, they say simulation, all those things, and I think that could be true, but either way, if we were put here by some sort of entity, we were probably endowed with everything that we needed. We may not have even really need to actually evolve. We may have just needed to use the abilities that we were given and develop the abilities that we were actually given to a full extent. This is what I'm thinking, but I don't know if it's true, but I believe that it could be. In other words, that we were actually endowed mentally and physically with superior minds and bodies, but we needed to learn how to use them, that's all. In other words, I suppose you could say we were already, this is good for the futurists or the humanists or whatever they call themselves, where they like the technology, okay? Maybe we were already a supercomputer in a human form, but we didn't know. We needed to just start using all the things. But instead, we got somehow taken over at some point in our so-called evolution, or whatever you'd like, our development, at some point, to where instead of developing and using what was natural, we got seduced by something. One in the Bible would probably say seduced by Satan or the serpent, or something that was against the original creator that plonked us here, and that we got tricked into thinking that was going to give us more knowledge and make us like God, like the creator, and we got tricked, like we are all seduced all the time, aren't we, really? So it doesn't surprise me. But yeah, to where, then this is, like I say, this, I do not think that, I'm not trying to be biblical, because I've never believed in anything in the Bible. I'm just using it now because it may fit it may fit almost a real historical narrative, even though I think that a lot of the stuff there might it is, unfortunately, will then be interpreted to mean that all the religions are correct, and that everything they believe and all the good and bad and all the stuff there is correct, and I don't think it is. Because look at the world. If it was correct, we'd have a good, perfect, peaceful world, and we don't. So clearly the religions and things down through the centuries have brought nothing but havoc. all of them, every single one of them, and they're still doing it, because they're not practicing the few good things that are in their religion. They're actually just fighting about their religion as though it is a god, which, they all represent something like that, but they're in conflict. They're being used, I think, there again, to be pushed down those paths to sidetrack the human being from what they're really meant to be. I've gone off the track again, but I think that we were, if you want to take that thing, that story, then we were seduced and sidetracked away from realising our own abilities. Like, for instance, I don't know, but if say for, when we were first plonked here, that we had incredible psychic abilities, like some people do have a bit more on this planet than others, I believe, and some people I have spoken to, I think, not me, but I think, I do have some stuff, but that's only more like that I observe more now, not that I can actually like read someone else's mind or know their thoughts. It's more just an observation with me, like most people probably think they do anyway. It's just that maybe I might notice a bit more now because of circumstances. I've been forced to wake up a little bit, you could say, so I'm not smart at all. So don't get me wrong, and I have to say that honestly. I'm not trying to be humble, and I'm not trying to be know-it-all by saying that I see something. Really, it's just all happened. I have very little control over it. I can't take any credit for it. But I am saying that I do think that humans have lost their abilities and do have more abilities. Now, I think that, supposing that originally we had, like, say, more psychic abilities, that we could actually read one another's minds telepathically or something like that, but we hadn't developed it much, or even if we had it, we took it for granted. We took it for granted because that was what we could all do. I think that's another thing too, is that whatever you are, if you started out, and particularly don't forget, we wouldn't have had any experience, we wouldn't have known what it would be like to be missing our abilities, and we would have took the abilities we had for granted. And then the serpent comes along, or something comes along that pretends to offer us more, despite the fact that we already have everything that we can possibly have to the best of our abilities. We cannot extend our abilities anymore because we have already been given everything. We already have the ability to make our mind and our body a so-called, what you could call a supercomputer, even though it's that, I hate that term, and I hate the computer, and I hate all that stuff, but to make it so that other people who think that way, the futurists, all these people, get it. We already were a supercomputer. We already had everything, much more than what these artificial computers and things that we're being seduced by, again, like the serpent now again, to use and to go down that path. The serpent promised us knowledge and stuff, because at that time we were already going to get that knowledge, and we already had a lot of it. We didn't know it because we were young and infantile, you could say, because we were already given by the so-called creator, being, entity, everything, but we were like children. We were playing, and some other being comes along and seduces us, and we're like, they offer us more. Yeah, here's the apple. You can have knowledge. You can be like your creator, because we may have even been in contact. You can grow up fast. You can be like the creator. And basically, we got seduced and, as usual, go down the wrong path. And I believe that was when perhaps our genetics, the master superior computer, was contaminated, made less, because we were not meant to. It'd be, like I say, it's a bit like interbreeding different species. The lion is not meant to breed with the elephant. Then you will come up with a composited, and that composited might be interesting, but it will not be as good as the original thing, I believe. I believe that. I think that you must keep things as they are, pure. But also, if something was created and it was actually perfect and nothing could actually better it, that would be really stupid for it to have then bred with something else that was different and basically would contaminate the whole gene. The whole supercomputer would then be, and also then they've gone along the line of being controlled, because they have entered into where they've given up their own ability to use their own computer, shall we say, their own supercomputer's been contaminated, but also they've handed their power over to this other entity. Not to the entity that created them, that gave them everything, but to one that also is powerful, obviously, and very seductive, obviously, to convince them. But then again, like I say, if we were children, and we still are, I still am, we're still children, we are not mature enough to realise, and we never got to realise our full potential, to realise that we were grown up superior beings. So we were able, very easy to be manipulated and to be led down that path, because, like when you're a child, you'll go and play with the first kid or something that comes along, and then if some adult is impressive or something, or some being appeared to be more powerful and bigger than you and more impressive and offers you this and tells you this, it would be easy for you to be seduced and to go along that line. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means that would happen to all of us. It would happen to me. It's happened to me most of my life, not in that dramatic way. So what I'm saying is that it's something that, and that's been used against us too, as though, yes, the fall of man, that we're less and whatever. And the more we think like that too, then we become less and less and less. And then we start to think, oh, we've got to give ourselves over to the technology, because, yes, that, everything is, like I say, a trick, because I think the minute that happened, where we got contaminated and we were made less, by whatever being or whatever force you want to say, and there is that missing link in the Darwin thing, to where we were going. Even if you believe that, there is still that missing link, isn't there? Even if you want to go along a realistic evolution type theory that we were evolving, and then at some point something happened to where we supposedly evolved too quickly. Now, that's an interesting point, because we probably did evolve too quickly, but we didn't really evolve. We just appeared, we changed, and we got more knowledge, but that was for a reason. That was to lead us down a path where we would eventually be devolving. What I'm saying is that if we had been left to ourselves, I think, and developed naturally with our own abilities, we would have become the natural supercomputer that we were meant to be. But instead we were tricked to go down the wrong path. And once we started down that path, we've kept going down it. But also, once our genetics were lessened, before we could develop them to the full super abilities, or even learn to use the super abilities that we were actually genetically given, shall I say. It's hard for me to explain, because even I don't, I find it boggling, because, like I say, remember how I said that if we were given like the telepathy, the psychic ability originally, but we took it for granted, and now it was taken from us, and now we have very little of it left, very little. And even now, the few people that have a little bit of it, we tend to perhaps belittle them and think that it's just fake or it's just imaginitis. But I actually see it in some people. I see telepathy in some people, to be honest. I see remnants of it, and I see that they do have that little ability still, but they don't know it themselves. which is funny because it's like I see it and I'm like, hey, it's a bit like, and I think maybe some human beings that we're not totally gone, because I think that maybe even all human beings might still have a little bit of that, even more than a little. I don't know how much, but it's like, when you get that idea, how sometimes you get the idea, shall I say, that, oh, I should do this, right? You get an idea, and then you say, no, that's not realistic. I'm not going to do that. That's just an instinct. That's just a vibe. That's just, don't know where that come from. It clicks over in your head that it might, and then you dismiss it and you don't do it, and then later on you find that it was right, and you sort of say, well, that was just coincidence. That was no big deal. Okay, so I should have maybe went with the vibe, but that was just coincidence. It wasn't like I should stick with my so-called rational thinking and my so-called what I think is intelligence, and dismiss that. And if it turned out to be true, no, look, that was just coincidence. All these coincidences, like I think of all the coincidences over my life, all the coincidences. And now I realise that every day there are probably coincidences for people. Every day we have stuff in front of us that we should, that our minds still have that ability, but like I say, we're sidetracked with all the mobile phones and all the computers and stuff, to where we're not even going to be aware of our own, even the coincidences or the vibes that we might get. We're not even going to see them much now, because we are being taken over by the technology. Because if you're walking around with the mobile phone in front of you, you're not even going to see your natural vibe in front of you that might be telling you some truth. But anyway, I am thinking that there's still some of it there in people, but they're not aware of it. I have seen people myself where I know that they can read my mind. I know they can. They're picking up stuff about me before I speak it, but they don't know they've got the telepathy. They think they're just picking it up on maybe a facial expression, and maybe that's part of it. I don't know, but certainly I see that. But they do not believe in that ability. Even if you said to them, whereas some people do actually are quite conscious of it, and they might even use it. They might even use it for a living. I don't know. Psychics and people like that. I don't know how much more psychic they are than anyone else, and I would seriously doubt that they are. I just think that they're just aware and are using that little ability. They've become aware of it more than other people. In other words, other people just say everything's coincidence, and that's not possible. You don't actually have any of this. Whereas in reality, probably all people have it, but most people just have been taught to be rational. Like I say, that's the path we've been led down. That's the seduction. You do not have any abilities. You are just a rational mind. You are just a thinking mind. You only know what is put into you by the computer, and by that I mean an artificial computer these days. You do not have any real powers. Your mind is never capable of being as brilliant as an artificial intelligence. I don't believe that. I do not. Laugh at me though, and I mean, certainly if you listen to me, you'd probably say she's a good example that artificial intelligence is a lot smarter than a little old human being. So I wouldn't blame you there. And in my case, it is probably true. But look, I still think that humans, if they combined, and realistically, if we had not been so seduced and, like I say, stopped at some point from developing our full potential. In other words, if you were already given the ability to be totally telepathic, to where we do not need as I said before, we would not need mobile phones, because we would just communicate via our minds, because that's all telepathy and being psychic is. It's just that ability. Now, we've pushed that down to nothing instead of it being developed to where it's a natural thing. Now, some people might say you wouldn't want to read the minds, but I don't know, the mobile phone's the way people, you've got no privacy. The people that are reading your minds aren't the people you want to read your minds. They're the ones that control all this stuff. So actually we're a lot worse off than if we're just talking to someone that we know, or even if that person, we might not want them to know everything. But believe you me, there's plenty of people that know everything that's going on, and it's not who you think. So that's what I think, because if you haven't got any privacy, if everything is a world of surveillance and everything is we're using all these devices which are connected to an internet which is controlled by some people, surely. You know, you your mind and everything you think and what you do, certainly all your actions, what you're doing, is there for them to see. And quite frankly, I think that if you allow for vast technology, your mind is read, not just what you put on your Facebook or anything like that. Not that I know much about it, but basically the technology is there to read everyone's thought anyway. But we, I believe, originally, and we probably still have some, but while we go along the path of technology, we're losing it more and more, because we're giving our mind over to the technology instead of our mind controlling the technology. We do not control the technology controls us. There's no doubt about that. I say that honestly, even though I know nothing about a lot of things. But if you think you're controlling it because you're pressing a few buttons, it's delusion, it's fantasy. We had our own minds, and technology is the invasion of our mind. The technology is the invasion of our privacy, of our mind. It's the invasion of our thoughts. Before that, at least, we could choose to communicate with who we wanted to. Now, that is not the case. And I'm sure that, like I said, what's wrong with my videos, I've been too airy-fairy. I'm sure it's not getting across what I'm actually trying to say. But we have been like children. Like and we still are like children in a way. Like I have been like children too, because every time you play on your mobile phone, you're buying something. Every time, like I was watching the football show just last night, and I see a prominent footballer or ex-footballer, and he's older than me, which is he looks pretty good though, and he loves life. He does. He thinks he's got it great. He thinks he's got a great world. He's got a great material world. He's got big flash Ferrari cars, and probably got $1 million, and got big mansion probably, and living the life, and thinking that he's still young, dating, women and stuff, even though he's, like I say, 75 or something, which is, like I say, even older than me. I would not. But the thing is that good luck to him, I say that, but I still think that even he thinks that this is a great world, and I'm sure he can't wait to go into some cyborg body so that he can continue his lavish life for another 50, 100 years or whatever, and thinks that would be the way to go, because he's so proud of all his possessions. He loves the material world. And, I can't blame him, because he's got a great material world, but he is still like what we have been seduced. He's like a child, because he probably is, I'm sure he's laughing at me, and I don't blame him, but even so, he's got it pretty good on this planet, I'll say that. But he's still like a child, because He's playing with the toys. He's got his flash Ferrari car and he's 75 and getting into it and thinking, oh, aren't I so lucky I can drive this flash car around at high speed, and showing it off to younger people, and he's having a good time, but he's still acting like a child because he does not know that is, even though he's one of the lucky ones, he is still being controlled by that. He's still like a child playing with the toys. The big flash car is like the kid with the little motor car playing. You know, he's happy, but he's being seduced down that path. It's not actually totally his own choice. He's doing better than most of us in that respect, but it's still a bit of a trick, I think. Because the fact that he is so much into it and so proud of it, and doesn't realise that keeps him in this realistic material way of thinking, to where he hasn't developed the abilities, shall I say. You know, they're not developed, because if you focus, I mean, I'm not saying that you couldn't have material things. I think the beauty of this world is that we should have all the material things, but we also should have all the physical abilities, you know, that we were meant to have. Like, wouldn't it be great if we, instead of having to, well, you know, maybe I'm overrating, it's probably going to sound bizarre, but wouldn't it be great if we could actually fly ourselves instead of having to use mechanical things? You know what I mean? Wouldn't that be wonderful? You know, what if we actually did have a lot more abilities originally? Like I say, I mentioned the psychic because I think people can relate to that, you know? Whereas if you sort of say, if I sort of really speculated and thought that we actually, oh dear, it makes me depressed if I think about it, because I would certainly have loved some of the things. But it actually is depressing if you actually think that we've gone backwards in a way. But at the same time, if you're aware of it, maybe we could still latch on and still hold on to some of the things before we go down the other path to where we basically become nothing, to where we, as a human being, will, like I say, actually be dead, really. Because once you go, see, that's the danger of being so much in the material world, like I say, is that it's very easy then to be tricked by the serpent, to go even more into that material cyborg type physical thing, and lose the sight of the fact that this physical body and physical mind originally was meant to be the whole thing. It had everything. Even the physical body, which we now look upon as disease-ridden, and it is, because of what is put onto us, because we have been made less. Even physically, this human body, even the human body, didn't have to be. You shouldn't have to have a heart transplant. You shouldn't have to have any of those things. We shouldn't have to become cyborg type things, or robot, or artificial in any way, because I think that the original human body was 100% perfect. Mind, all sorts of abilities, physically, all sorts of abilities, and the body was not meant to have any disease or illness, and not meant to be in conjunction with plastic in any way, shall we say. I'm using plastic now, I'm addicted even to plastic use, but what I'm saying is the human body was not meant to have plastic parts or artificial parts. It didn't need it, because it could renew itself 100% perfectly naturally. Because the minute you put an artificial part into what is a perfect organism, if that organism originally was perfect and could replace itself perfectly and perform at the absolute optimum level, the same with the human mind. If it was a human computer, if it was a superhuman computer, and then you start altering it, making it less and taking the abilities from it, taking even, like I say, the psychic abilities, the telepathy from it, it is then contaminated, it is less. And you put the artificial things into the body. Sure, they'll keep the body going for a few more years, you know, but that's it. And every time you do that, you're taking some of the genetics away from the body, which the body needs to remain superior. You see, I don't fully get it, but that's what I think, because if something is already perfect and got all the abilities there, needs nothing, and will renew itself and will function 100%, if you put something artificial into it, it will keep it going. But that's the trick, I think. That's the trick, because if the human body in this world was meant to work 100% perfectly and keep working 100% perfectly and was able to renew itself without any interference, just naturally, and then I'm trying to say, let's just say the powers that be, the environment even, is completely inundated with a toxic substance, and that goes into your body, contaminates your natural, perfect super body, and makes some of the parts go bad, and then someone else comes along and says, hey, but I can replace that with a synthetic part, an artificial part that will keep you going, because you probably think you've got no choice, which you haven't in a way, and then you replace that with something synthetic because of the bad thing that was put onto you, which should not have been in part of the environment anyway, because not only was our human body perfect and our human mind a supercomputer, but the actual earth was a perfect environment for us. So, I mean, I'm not going to go into God and all that stuff, or creators and stuff, but it would appear that we were plonked in a perfect environment for our perfect supercomputer body, mind, etc. to develop. But we have been compromised completely by the serpent, or by Satan, or by whatever, or by something from outer space that come here and seduced us and took over us and bred with us and ruined our genetics, and then kept seducing us because they have the technology and the power. And then we get pushed down to where this is no longer our planet, to where we are just working for them, you could almost say, I suppose, because once you become compromised and less, you are not the superior human on your perfect planet that was meant for your development so that you could develop to the utmost. Now you have become like the cats and dogs are to us, a domesticated animal controlled by beings that were not meant to be superior to us. We were meant to end up being superior to quite a lot of others, I would say. But instead, we have now become, yes, as a certain famous scientist said, a domesticated cat. We are the domesticated cat. Some of us are well looked after domesticated cats, like the fellow, the sports person I told you about that has the cars and that thinks it's great in this material world. Some of us are looked after, some of us are not. But we're still not the superior beings that we should have been. We have not developed the way we have meant to develop on this earth, and even the very earth that is around us has been completely contaminated and compromised by us, but by us that have been controlled by the serpent, or whatever you want to say. I could perhaps be more specific, but I'm going to put it out there in my usual airy-fairy way. It doesn't really matter what force you want to call it. Eventually we'll find these things out when it's too late. We will find out exactly what the real forces are, exactly what the real, things that have done all these things to us are. And we will get that wrong too, because that also, when it does happen, will be another setup, because, like I say, we do not live in an environment that we control. So if tomorrow we think we find out some truth, you can be sure that that truth will only be because we are allowed to find it out, and that means that it will probably take us down that final path to where we are even more compromised, because once we have now got this whole setup around us that is all false, where unless you become completely aware of that and accept that everything is false, that everything about you is controlled, that you have no control and that you've been completely compromised, that you should have been ruler of your own planet, or at least in control of your own planet, and you should have been in control of yourself. You should have been a brilliant human being. The human being should have been, and I believe this is why we were compromised too, because I believe that the so-called serpent that come in was jealous of us, knowing that we, even though they were technologically and had more tricks and more advancement because they'd been around longer, so therefore they were superior, they knew that with our natural, perfect mind and body that we were originally given, that we would eventually surpass them by a long way. But instead, we have been pushed down to a domesticated cat or dog, to where they are the rulers, they are the superior, and their technology and their abilities. The serpent has dominated the planet, shall we say. And I believe that's why we were compromised, because opposing powers that be did not want us to develop to our full potential, and they did not want us to even realise the abilities we had were so special. They were like, it's a bit like if you've got a flash car, right? And you're actually very happy because you've got this perfect, wonderful flash car. And then someone comes along and says, hey, oh, yeah, I've got a better car for you. And they seduce you and trick you to think that your car is less and that what they're offering is more. And that's what, I guess that's the whole Garden of Eden thing. But I think that something may have happened, like I say, even with the missing link, the Darwin's missing link, where there was some intervention at some stage to where we were completely compromised and made a lot less than what we were. And because we took our developing abilities for granted and was seduced and tricked by something. Like, for instance, it's like this, it's like a fairy tale, right? If I'm a little human being, a pathetical little thing like I am now, like you're looking at me and probably laughing, and I don't blame you, and all of a sudden I see some great being appear in front of me that's 100 times my size or something like that, and they appear to be able to do magic and technology and stuff, of course I'm going to bow down to them. Because I'm not going to think that oh, my little psychic abilities, or even if I was able to fly around, even if I was able to teleport all over the planet, even if I was starting to develop and know things, I would still be impressed by that big being. You know what I'm saying? And so, if he appeared and come and said, hey, I can offer you more, you're only a little pathetical thing, and I can squash you, even though he couldn't really squash me, but I wouldn't know that. You know what I mean? I would bow down to him. I wouldn't know that he should really be frightened of me, because when I develop, and yeah, I could even just fly away really, but I'm still, because if I have these abilities, I'm sounding way off, aren't I? Most people are going to say she's totally off, and I know, because I can't prove it, and I don't, I'm not saying that, that's just my belief that we were something wonderful once, and that I look at the world now and I see us controlled by things, and I can see that we are. I know it because it's happened to me, so it's like, hey, that proves it to me that even where and also I think now, hey, like I've always lived very much in this real world and thought I have very little control. In fact, I always thought, hey, I don't even have control over my own mind. I always thought that, because I have weaknesses and things, and I'm like, hey, I want to be normal like everyone else. I want to be able to just do regular things. I don't want to, because I'm always worried about germs and stuff like that and washing my hands. I'm like, oh, I want to be free like everyone else, get my hands in the dirt and stuff. But see, that was put on to me from a young age too. So like I say, we're all made to feel less and to always be worried and stressed. I've been stressed and worried my entire life. Never hardly had a moment to think, and I always thought other people are a lot more free. They don't worry about so many things, But essentially, I now realise that we're all in the same boat in some ways, that they might be luckier some ways, and like I say, some people have got it pretty good, comfortable, but they are still controlled too. Maybe not as much as me, but they're going to go even further down that control path because they like it. They actually think it's good, whereas I'm like, hey, I don't like it. I don't want it. I can't stand it. I think I would rather be, I would rather depart this planet in a way than continue to be in a world where I'll be trapped here in this physical domain that is so limited because we think it's actually got the promise of being expanding ourselves. All it's got the promise of, as far as I can see, is to take us over more to where in the end we're a domesticated cat or dog for a while, and eventually we won't even be that. We'll end up like the cockroach where they just tread on us. And all the while we'll think that we're in control, that we are got it made, and that because we've got a flash car, because we've got a mansion, because we've got this or that, and because we still look around and see the natural world, and because we can still walk down the street despite the fact that we're being surveilled and watched and tracked like little mice in a lab, like whether you're running it through the maze and the mice is trapped, and it's just that our parameter is wider. We don't realise we're in this trapped world, but our parameter is wider. I saw that on a YouTube video only a few days ago. That's right, that if your prison is like this room, then you become aware that you're in the prison, And then if you saw the cameras watching you and someone was speaking to you and telling you what to do, your every movement, you'd say, hey, I'm trapped. I'm in a prison, I may as well be dead. But if that parameter is wider to where it's like your city or even what you might think of your country, because you think you can move around, but they're still controlling you and watching you and you're still the mice, but your parameter's wider, you don't actually know you're in that prison. And if you've got all the goodies and they're giving you all the toys to play with, like the footballer, like he's got his little toy big flash cars, even though he's like myself too. I still like toys too, so I don't blame him. I say good luck to him, but it's a pity that he's not aware as well, because then but then maybe if he was aware, they wouldn't let him have the toys. See, this is the thing. They only give the toys and the big money to the people that they know will serve the system, will serve keeping that plaything in place. And also it makes the rest of us so jealous and envious. I know myself, I've spent my whole life thinking I'm a nothing and a nobody. I'm so envious of all these people that have all these, great life and all the money, and they're so free and they're so relaxed. They've got all the conveniences, they've got all the this and that. And also they, just the fact that people listen to them. Like, I'm sure that no one's even listening to my video now. I know I'm talking to myself, but I just feel that I'm so frustrated I have to put it there. In the past I wouldn't have even done that. But yeah, we're actually made to be envious of other people in the material world too, which also stops us from thinking that we have got anything in our own mind, that we are any sort of supercomputer or anything. That's right. How could we think that when we're looking at all the celebs and all the people and everyone else seems to have a lot more too? And I'm not saying that everyone thinks like that, because there are some people obviously that are reasonably well off, some people that are really well off, some people that own everything. But it's all a comparison. But when it really comes down to it, there's very few people that have really got everything. But most of us are always trying to get more, and we're always envious to some extent. And then when we get a little something, we think, oh, that's great, we've got it made, this is the real world. But it's, like I say, in reality, none of this would matter, even if we had been compromised a little bit, if we were still in control. Like if some physical catastrophe had happened to us to where we were compromised and it wasn't deliberate, then if we were still free, we could probably have got things back. We could probably even genetically, just naturally have got things back. But while we keep going along the line of everything being artificial and everything, I mean, the problem now is that it was a bit like the other video. We're in a dilemma because even I don't have the answer that way. Like, are we in such a dilemma now that we're almost forced to go along the line of, yeah, like physically, if we get sick, we can't cure ourselves anymore. And we wouldn't even know how, even if it was still there, because we're so seduced by chemicals and pills and artificial replacements. We think that's the only way we can go, and we believe that it's that the genetics and all the stuff. I'm sure there's some truth to all that genetic stuff, but I don't think we get it, because I don't see myself right now, even just basic little illnesses. I don't think that I should be riddled with arthritis. And I wonder why I'm riddled with arthritis after, when only like 3 years ago I was walking 12 miles and slim and felt like I was like 30 again, 25, like I'd actually got back my health. But then the environment changed to where I'm now much worse off, and it all happened very quickly. And like most people, I could easily say, oh, well, maybe that was because I didn't look after myself when I was young, or didn't do this or that. There's always another explanation, instead of saying, hey, this is a physical, environmental thing. It was out of my control. And I believe that now, whereas I didn't believe it even 12 months ago. I would have been quite quick to say, oh, well, maybe I didn't do this or that when I was young. Maybe I didn't get enough calcium. Maybe I didn't drink enough milk, or this or that. And I do not believe that now, because I've thought about it and I've traced everything. And to me, it's like, no, that's not the case. It would appear to fit the bill. There's always two ways of looking at things. Like I say, there's always two paths to take, and there's always two ways of looking at things. And we always look at things the way that we're told to, instead of actually going with our instinct and saying, because my instinct did tell me that, but then I looked at the practical and said, oh no, well no, this is right, you didn't. But I say to myself, why was I then got better and then got suddenly worse? See, that's where I was able to pick it up. Whereas if it had been a slow, gradual thing, and if I had been doing the wrong thing, then it would have fitted the bill perfectly. But also I wonder why we haven't got a cure for all these things. And when I say a cure, I mean, like, because I believe that if they can clone Dolly the sheep, I believe, and this is, like I say, if they can clone Dolly the sheep, they can clone humans. There's no doubt about that. I mean, think about it. If you can clone an animal, and I've looked at on the YouTube, and 20 years ago, scientists were actually saying we can clone a human being. We won't, because it's not good, it's naughty, naughty. The whole world is naughty. Like, who are they kidding? Like, I'd do it myself probably. You wouldn't be able to help yourself if you have something there. You do it even for fun in the original, okay, like I'm a lonely, pathetical person. I think I might clone a Brad Pitt or a Britney or something to keep me happy, I'm just being ridiculous, but no, but look, seriously, you would do it. And, and if you can do those things, you could cure arthritis. It shouldn't have happened anyway. Like I say, we should have been able to cure ourselves. But even if you want to go down the realistic path that that we're progressing, even technologically wise, even that becomes, like, to me, unrealistic, that we are not able to now be almost, at least genetically, curing by the so-called scientists and the people that develop things. And I'm sure that they are, that some of the real rich people are able to do that, because if you've got the money, and even the scientists, like we've seen it for years in the movies where the mad scientist just keeps all his stuff for himself, but these days even the scientists, I think, everything is about money. So everything is probably subservient to the people who have the real money. They would even buy the scientists, they would buy everything, wouldn't you? I would, you know. And I'd sort of say, well, okay, so I've been compromised and whatever, and my body is now shit, ruined, not able to help itself, but I can use the genetics, my money, and the science, the technology to actually improve that. And I don't mean that's right by artificially, like if 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 my hand is no good, that it should be replaced by an artificial one. No, because genetically they can do it, like to where we still have even our biological body, I believe. So I think that we're pretty much tricked and in a shit place all round, you know, and I think that that's it. But we have to, at least, it's too late for me. Like, I don't want a part of any of it now. I don't want the robotic parts. I don't want the robot body. I don't want obviously, obviously, if they offered me the genetics tomorrow to cure the, arthritis and all the different ailments that I've got, I would probably take it. But I think that it should be for everyone. It shouldn't be for just a few people, while the rest go down and then are put into a cyborg body so that they're even more, so that the prison that we're now living in becomes obvious. Then at some point it would become obvious, but then it's too late, because once you're totally trapped in something artificial, there would be no way out, I wouldn't think. And there again, that's probably not going to sound realistic, because if you're living in the 3D world, you're not going to think that there's any other way out. You'd have to then start thinking like that, what are we really? Like, what were we really created? Like, are we really just a physical body, even if it was meant to be a super body? Like, are we an avatar? Sort of thing, like, is this body just something that was meant to be temporary anyway? Or, in other words, that we could actually leave it and go into another form? I don't know. Or are we really totally trapped in the physical? So once you start to think that you're trapped in the physical, then you are going to be driven down the cyborg physical path, because that's the only path you could possibly contemplate. And if your mind thinks that, and of course we think it, because I've thought it my whole life, and it still is my reality. But if you start to think that, hey, we were meant to be so much better, and that we have been compromised, even though you can't get back those abilities at this stage, and maybe you might not be able to, I don't know, we might have been compromised to where that is irretrievable. But we still, I think, I've seen it in some other human beings, like I say, where I see that they have got abilities that they do not realise. I see it myself. I don't even have their abilities. Mine are not as good. But I see it in them, but they don't see it in themselves. So it's a bit like if you had an ability, but you don't know you've got an ability, you think you're limited, then you haven't got that chance. Got to sign off. Someone's at the door.